Guys, welcome. This is Other Battles of the Things. Just in case that 90-minute game of L5R was not enough L5R for you, here's 10 more minutes of us talking about. So, we're L5R players talking about ourselves playing an L5R video in a video about L5R. So, check that. Um,
Yeah, we've got pretty deep here.
I've got my games here booted up to the first attack. This is a pretty straightforward attack. I just played some cards, had probably switching forced attack. What's interesting about it is from Paul's perspective. I want to talk about two things. The first is taking the mulligan, when to take the mulligan, and the second is when to not take the mulligan, because you don't get those in tournaments, and this ended up being a real game.
Right, so as a general rule, when Jesse and I play, if the draw is just sort of like this flabbergastedly stupid bad start, where it's like, oh, I didn't get holding on one, or I got, 1 2 for 2 holding in my first 8 cards or something, we'll just do it. We'll do a straight mulligan, and if that series of flips keeps coming up, then we can say, okay, well, you're getting bad early gold. That's not what you want to do. Go back, rework your deck, and then we'll play some more games, because you need to maximize your time. Time is a resource in playtesting. You don't get to play 100 matches. You don't get to just keep playing anything under multiple different conditions. And so you don't want to force ideal conditions. But if a match is, hey, he doesn't get a holding on turn one and I beat him, well, that's okay. But I don't need a game to tell me that. What was interesting here is that I knew how my deck was structured. I knew that I had the ability, going into with just a clan holding on my first turn isn't good, but I knew there was the potential to sort of, if I get another clan holding plus 2 farm holdings, or something like that, if I get 6 gold cost worth of holdings that also make 6 to 7 gold, or maybe double, like I knew there was some potential outs, so I didn't want to take the mulligan, and I stand by that. And again, if my famous bazaar had flipped to 2 for 2, I'd say that's fine. Like that's not ideal. It's still suboptimal, but it's a suboptimal configuration that's going to occur with some small percentage of the time. But once a tournament or something. This was a little bit worse than that, but there was so much stuff that I wanted. There were other factors that I wanted to see in the deck, and I knew I could lose a province and sort of chug along that. I'm experienced enough. I know how to extrapolate data outward from my games enough that I was like, I'm going to just try to play through it and sort of see what this situation leads me to. And I'm really glad I did, because I really learned a lot there. So I'm okay not taking the mulligan there. And I think a lot of players sort of echo that sentiment. They say, oh, these things happen. Let's see what happens. The problem is other players don't play the just sheer number of games of L5R that I play. So most of the time, you should just say, like, this is a terribly bad draw. I don't want to play this game, and start over. Like, that's an okay thing to do.
Especially if you're just playing for fun. I
So,
mean, I know a lot of we always talk about testing
yep,
this, testing that. Like, people just play for fun, and just have fun. I
yeah.
worry that people sometimes get really like fired up about playing out like we're serious, we're hardcore L5R players. Don't worry about it.
So looks like, I think, the turn where you wanted to launch your second attack, but I think I stunted you with a Vigilant Eyes,
I think
maybe?
I skipped that turn. I actually forgot
Okay, so
that.
that was the
So
thing that happened,
that
and I
Vigilant
got value out
Eyes,
of Vigilant Eyes.
yeah, I mean that was
I was really
gas.
happy with that.
That was pure gas.
Yeah, I
This
mean,
is the
it
Vigilant
was a
Eyes
real
turn
card.
here. I think that I kind of
Yep.
like looked on my nose at that card when you sort of pulled it out. We made a joke that you really wanted to play Insight, and you put
I
Vigilant
did. I
Eyes in
really
your.
wanted to play Insight. And I
Um,
accidentally put Insight into keyword, and there came Vigilant Eyes. I'm like, I'll give this a try. I was pretty happy with it.
yeah, because this is the
I was
board
happy with
state.
almost all of my red cards. I was pretty happy with. I hated my one stupid attachment. I hated it so much, and I hate dirty. Like, those are the swaps for me.
Was this? This can't be right. Yeah, this is so. It was actually. I didn't have that. I drew the contentious train off the top. This was the board state when you played the Vigilant Dice, and
Yep.
so like I could have like bluffed. I could have tried for a swing anyway. I think there's no way I would have defended because I had three.
Yeah, I mean, I would have defended and tried to ride Plan Departure and just hoped that Plan Departure gets me there.
Yeah, so there's no sort of shenanigans to do. So this is the next real attack right here. And so this is
Yep.
where,
And
I
you can see
mean,
my gold starting to come together, but yeah. So this is the first real attack, right?
right, and I made, so this is maybe a borderline attack. Um, I don't end up losing anything, but like, if I hadn't jammed out that, uh, this isn't actually the attack I don't think where I play the resilience
It
card, but if I
is.
hadn't, it is, if I hadn't jammed that out so early, and I had that in the very, very end, like that would have been Blowout City. Maybe
You
not,
did have it
because
at the very, very end.
no, I had
You had
contentious
it then.
terrain at
You
the
jammed
very end.
contentious first.
I'm talking about the resilient terrain. If I had like been able to do a defense before, like saved like a province on a chump defend with everybody's resilient and then
Yeah.
counterattack.
But you had to play it here, or else you would have lost the game, right? So you don't
No, I
think you
know. I'm
should. So
saying
you're
that
thinking you
maybe
could
this
maybe.
attack was bad. I,
That's really interesting to me. So this is one of those attacks that I felt you were going to sort of priced into making, because if you're playing a lion deck and you've got 5 guys to 3 and a full hand, like I mean, if you don't attack here, you're pretty much signaling that you don't plan to ever attack.
yeah, fair enough. I guess the only other thing I could think of is that slow playing the contentious terrain was a mistake. Like so,
Did you slow play it?
yeah, I slow played it to the very end. Like I could see my logic was that it was better as a force pump at the end of the battle to swing the battle into my favor after you took
Okay,
all
well,
your
so
fears.
so let's go through it a little bit action by action. I thought you put contentious first and then ended with resilient terrain. I don't remember a slow play of contentious.
So the first
Oh, you're
thing,
saying you should have like put it as your first action?
yeah, I could
I
have just
went
jammed
like
it straight up.
fear on.
So you went Roburo Fear 4 on Tayuko first, and then I go Serenity Shoot at Sushi.
Guy with fear 2.
But what I could have done was play Contentious, which turns off your Etsushi
Okay.
just fine anyway, right?
Yeah.
But also turns
Well,
off,
it forces it to hit like Shugenja instead. I know
right, do
then
nothing
turning off
Shugenja
could.
guy.
Yeah.
And it turns off your box. I guess the other thing I could have done would be to have engaged. So, like, the thing about this hand is that I have a lot of options, right? So I can kind of
Yep.
agonize. Like, I could have engaged the strike as the earth, and then surrendered the fear four
Roburo.
guy, the Uburo instead.
Well, he goes. That just would sort of push my hand into using Roburo right away. So I mean, it's
Well,
like
you use him right away
you're
anyway.
playing.
The idea is just he's like the four
Yeah,
force guy. He's the big threat. He's the one I want in the bin at
I
any
can
rate.
see that.
Just like kill the guy I
And
want dead.
this is sort of the battle that you generally, as the spider deck, want to just let go. You want to just be like, whatever, he's attacking. I give him the province. I counted it. But I really didn't think that I could just give up another province. I was still tight on gold. And I didn't have a great counterattack play because of the things he was purchasing from his provinces, and it was just like you gotta stem the bleeding somewhere, and so I really felt compelled to jump in here, and I don't want to say it worked out. I lost the battle. I lost the game. But I think that if you just let this province go, you're just sort of conceding the game. You're just going to get sort of run over every turn thereafter.
Yeah, if I was playing 4 out of 2, if I was doing my sit strategy from 4 provinces to your 2, I think there would have been an attack window towards the end of the game for
I
me.
think you would have. I don't even think you would have had to sit. I think you would have been able to just sort of gain enough momentum and steam. And that's one of the strengths of the Lion deck here is that it can operate on a different axis. It can start down one path and then sort of pivot to sort of an honor out strategy as needed.
For sure. So that battle happened. I guess like in general. So how would you think about playing against this fear deck? Should I be like jamming my box right away to block fears with high force, or should I just be trying to
If you have
slow
an
play that stuff?
attachment, like so, box with an attachment requires a lot of workaround. Especially if I don't have my terrible item that lets me sort of blow it up. But even if I do, like a kitty cat follower with box is just going straight to the box. I don't think does much because it just forces something like a Way of the Spider, just creates it or a courage card or something against fear decks. trying to just get like a really high number often isn't the solution.
Mm.
There was, I do think you would have, like, especially looking at your hand with the double contentious into the resilient turn, like the Valiant Springs. I'm pretty sure you should have put the contentious out. It's like no fuss, no muss, play one, and that creates like a little bit of a hurdle.
Yeah.
And even if I have an answer, you can just like go to another one. So I think I would have absolutely put contentious out sooner.
Fair enough. Like there might have been a way to win that battle.
Well, you did win the battle, or
Well,
so,
more decisively.
yeah.
Like without. I guess like I went for the cheek kill and like you bailed, so there's kind of no way to get around it. So this
So
is
the
the
question,
next.
yeah, the question is, so the attrition effects of that, is like, so if you put contentious out, then you're not going to play your show no mercy, and I think you were sort of like, I want to use the show no mercy attrition effects. I
Fair
think
enough. You
there's
know,
that sort of.
you're right. It might be
This
the
is,
problem. Might be that I was like dwelling on that battle. Might be wrong. This is the battle really to dwell on. This is where the sit started, right?
yeah,
Um, because yeah, this is the battle where I jammed the Valiant defense.
yep.
So from your perspective, this was another auto defend for you.
Again, just, if I let him take the province, he's got 4 provinces to my 2. He ends his turn with, say, 8 guys to my 3, and he's gaining another personality. Yeah, this was another one of those. The risk is high, but to me, it's all about what happens if, Plan A is not defend, but Plan A leads promptly to completely get blown out just on board position, right? Like I'm not going to be, even with all of my flips, it's going to be really tough for me to just generate, or because at the end of the day, you can go guy flip into guy only once. Like that only happens off the stronghold, right? So I can
Mm-hmm.
filter through my holdings pretty well, but I can still only get so many personalities. And just losing another province here just felt like it was a bridge that couldn't be crossed.
Yep.
Plus, I had a hand. I mean, I had effects, right? My thing is that I have guys that do things, and I'm going to take a lot of actions. And the more time I give you, the more guys you get, the harder it is for those things to carry meaningful value, and I give you more chances to draw to outs. So yeah, it was another pretty snap defense.
Yeah. The matchup's actually kind of grindy for me because your cards do a lot more than mine do. It's like I buy a guy that has 1 force and no printed battle abilities, and you buy a 4 force guy with a fear 4. It's
Yep.
they don't match up the best. So I really need to have a big numerical advantage to get anything from life.
Something we talked about when we talked about the new order. There's a lot of like these fear 3s and fear 2. It's like, you know, Fear 3 is a card that does something. Like, that's a card that, against most matchups, it's turned on in some way. And my deck is filled with those kinds of effects.
Well, I wouldn't say most matchups, but certainly lots
No,
of
I,
them.
I think most matchups are military, and most military guys have some 3 force things. Like, it's a question of how, what's the opportunity cost. But they have targets.
Fair enough. So this turn for me is just a question of sequencing, and I think I sequenced the battle okay. I could have jammed the contentious earlier again as sort of like a freebie, but I think what I did is my first action was I shot his Fear 3 guy, which I'm pretty solid with. So he went like
Yeah,
Fear
I
4
think.
guy. I would shoot his Fear 3 guy.
Right, so I think in retrospect you played it just where you want to be, which is like you want to be attacking, you want to be putting pressure on me. You're hoping I just don't defend and you'll sort of steamroll me, but if I do defend, hit the attrition button and buy more stuff. And against most decks, I mean, if I'm not playing the farm scheme, I get blown out this game, just because I get my deck clogged, right? I mean, and
Yeah.
if I don't have a bunch of like karmic-y farm stuff to sort of filter through my holdings to keep getting to my guys and run out of it, like I just lose. So I mean, I think in most situations the attrition play is the absolute correct play.
Yeah, these little attrition effects are nice. There's matches where you look at these range threes and you just roll your eyes, but this was not one of them. And then like this is where like, the game sort of grinds to a halt, and everybody should click flip through. Um,
Yeah, I tried to construct an argument that I should have been attacking somewhere sooner, but it was never right. I needed to rebuild. I needed the counting house to restock invade, and I needed to gain answers to the favor. I needed to get out all three Ashigaru forts for the straighten effects. On my end, it was very much like, I've got time, I've got to use it. And in my case, the time was really beneficial because it let me sort of work my way out of this production-y stranglehold issues that I was having, right? It took a long time for the deck to get to a point where it was flowing smoothly. Like, I didn't get to attach, the ready blades off the Kagato until I had, like, completely exhausted my Dynasty deck, right?
yeah.
There was always issues. And so I felt like, I was given the time to draw out, and I said, okay, I'll take it.
And I know, I mean, I'm looking at the board state here. There's no attack. I think he's outforcing me, and I only have one card in my hand, which has no legal targets. Like, it's a mess.
Yep. And you have this great defensive position where it's like, well, you get the favor on defense, and you're gonna buy some more guys, and yeah.
Yeah, and if you had attacked into the
And you
favor here,
always won. You never drew the follow. You always won drawing of Suku Sagasu follow away from just sort of like starting to just turn the corner and take over
yeah, I
even
only
more
saw
impressively,
one.
right?
I saw one. I pitched early for a favor cycle because I didn't see a Lyco. Um,
Yep.
yeah, like the breeder side of the deck didn't really like fire on all cylinders this game, which is fine. I mean, it's gonna happen in a Russian
Yeah, you only
engineering
got
deck.
11 created personalities.
Well,
Only 11.
we played for an hour and a half. I feel like that's not
Well, it's not
completely
my fault you're a
unreasonable.
slow player, man.
It's not my fault that I'm a slow player. Okay.
So do you want to talk about letting the provinces go? I feel like that's sort of the next step. So we build, we build, we build.
Yep.
You're always feeling good about the build. I at some point I was just like, well, it's time to start. And for me, it was just a pure mathematical calculation of uses of Ashigaru forts and numbers and all that stuff.
For sure. For me, it's just a question of like,
Why defend if you don't have to?
not even just why defend if I don't have to. That my position, like, next turn was always a slightly better defense. So like I had recognized that the
Yep.
game was going to come down to the final showdown. So
Yep.
the whole game now for me was figuring out what's the way to maximize my board position when the showdown happens, which means that
Right, and once I'm out of Dynasty deck, it's just like every turn you get is just like pure upside, right?
right,
It's just like insanity. You're not even dealing with is my turn better than his turn anymore because my turn is 0. So it's like every turn you get is just upside all the way.
absolutely. And that's like kind of the strength of this deck. One thing I noticed playing the Lion like all out blitz deck was that you'd come into these grindy situations sometimes where you'd either have to do
Yep.
just a Death Seeker attack where you try to make your opponent blink and make a mistake and win, or you sit and you sort of lose the game because it comes down to this sort of board position. But Lyco lets you break that stalemate. Like once his deck's
Yep.
empty, like every turn that goes on after that is just a turn. I'm a turn closer to winning the game because I'll just eventually have infinity guys. The other thing, so in the near term though, if you can make an argument that okay, that's silly. Like I don't want to go for infinity turns. There has to be an attack in here somewhere. But it's not here. When I'm still on 4 provinces, it's not here. I really wanted him to take the first province because I would draw 2 fake cards off that, and that would reload me
Yeah.
pretty good.
I had the thought that maybe it was a mistake of me to even attack that province. In retrospect, you were so flush that I think giving you the 2 cards was just sort of like a ridiculous thing. I think that it's pretty clear where it feels like I'm like, I took out 6 gold, man. How cool is that? What a great play. But in retrospect, I'm doing the thing where I'm failing to consider what's important. I didn't prioritize properly. And I gave you 2 fake cards when I didn't have to. and the 2 fate cards were considerably more valuable than the gold. You weren't struggling on gold now.
Well, there was a little hiccup the next turn. You got the 6, and then I
Yeah,
swept
because of
this. Yeah.
because you couldn't like invest and leaky and all that. I guess, but
Yeah, yeah. So,
meh.
yeah, exactly. Meh.
I certainly should have done. I certainly should have weighed it more carefully than I did. I sort of auto double attacked the 2 fortifications.
Yep. And then we get to the final battle, and there was a lot of agonizing here, but everything was pretty straightforward. Um, the triple attack. I guess I could talk about this, like the very last turn
But
there.
we've already sort of discussed it, which is this like every turn you get is a turn that's like just all value, and it's just so much better to just drop down and gain another dynasty card
Yeah, for sure.
because you're not losing anything. Yeah, I mean, you're not losing anything, right? You don't you're still buying out of one province. I'm not buying out any provinces.
No, it's true. It's just like if sometimes. I mean, I won the final battle, right? So there's an argument for that. But like, say you had a terrain answer, then I would have lost the final battle. Or if I didn't have the Ring of Earth, I would have lost the final battle. So it was
Well,
closer
but
than
knowing
it.
how the battle went, is there any real way you could have gotten through the 3 defensive units on the attack? Like, it doesn't feel like you could have to me. Like, without, you would have had Marito, who would have been shut down on the first act. So you have no Marito, no favor. I don't think you have powerful enough actions.
Right, which I think is a big
I mean,
problem
I'm
with the
looking at your
deck.
hand now. Yeah,
And
you don't have any answer for like a 7/4 unit, right? You don't have a treachery and deceit. So yeah, you wouldn't have been like you didn't really have it. Like you numerically had the force to attack multiple provinces, but there was no way you were like honestly looking at it, 2 defenders would have been fine for me. I don't think you could have gotten through 2 defenders.
Yeah, you have 2 guys. You'd have 2, 4,
Like if I have just the Roboro and the
5. Yeah,
Oniyaru, that's probably enough.
six,
Like
six piles.
2
Yeah,
fear
you got
effects
me. Yeah,
plus the
yeah, yeah.
box fear effect. Yeah.
So that all happens. There's some pretty clear changes. I want to add some more high impact cards to this deck. Maybe some Soul Sacks or something like that.
Yeah, I could see as good as the attrition effects were. I mean, Serenity, I don't think is coming out, but I could see show no power. I think we might be moving to a point where having to bow a guy to kill. So, like, you're not playing Fearful Volley because
Yeah,
I mean you don't have a ton of scouts, but you could. You have enough scouts. I think we might be moving to a point with the Lion where it's like bowing to kill something isn't what you want to be doing.
agreed. Yeah,
I could see that.
and
Um,
I can see
and there's
putting in like the some move home and then the unstoppable interrupt that cancels their move back in sort of stuff.
yep. So.
And this is a deck I
Okay,
think
I
that can
don't.
really benefit from send home packages because you can just you take their provinces and you just don't care.
Yeah, I think so. I think that this is really a deck that sort of plays to the board. The fear of send home is like you send them home and then they counterattack, right? Like that's the problem with send home. That's why you'd prefer to kill them. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard for me to say. Well, you got to swap this. You got after a single game in which everything sort of in which we both played out the overwhelm. Like we both played out like our whole decks and our whole hands and did all this stuff. So it's hard for me to say any of them weren't good. In my case, the only card I sort of hated was the attachments on the Fate side, just because I feel like I need gas, and I'm so devoted to using my gold in the Dynasty or through the Dynasty personalities that I don't think I should be messing around with Fate side attachments.
Fair enough. And you make the joke that we bought out our whole decks, but this is strict, man. I think that this sort of ground game military that grinds out is going to be way more common than people think. Just because
Well, and it's
there's no grenades to
we
throw, you
both
know.
we both bought out our whole decks, but also we had to do a lot to get to that point, right? It's like I had to defend and play a bunch of cards. You attacked and played a bunch of cards. I mean, like when you look at the game in its segments, that was how the pace of the game goes. There will be variations of this matchup where you play the Lion deck against some other deck where like they go, I'll defend, and you're just like, okay, kill, do this, buy more guys, attack, take the next province, and they're not flipping a bunch of provinces and you overwhelm them. That's what Lion Military does sometimes.
For sure. I mean, I think Spider of all the military decks, Crab might give it some trouble because the guys are too big to shoot with my little dirtily range threes. But Spider,
Sure.
like they don't lose a lot of tempo from my attacks, right?
Yep.
Okay, I think that's certainly enough talk. We got like 2 hours of junk for
Yep.
a little watch here. Let us
That's
know
right.
what you think. We're gonna post these deck lists in the blog post, so use that little scrolly wheel on the mouse, keep going down, so you can check it out, see what you think. Let us know what you would change to either of these decks and how you think Spider Fear Dueling is poised going into 20 festivals. If you have questions, comments, concerns, please leave us a comment. Follow us on Twitter. We are twitter.com/EnoughTalkL5R. Same thing with Facebook, EnoughTalkL5R. And the website, which we like the best because it is neither Twitter nor Facebook.
So
All right,
true.
guys. We'll catch you later. Thanks for listening. I'm Jesse. That's Paul.
Hang loose, everybody. Okay,
There it is.
let's get